Okay, we're back with part three of the Civil War unit. As you can see, I've got a new location now. Hopefully, there won't be too much background noise, but we'll try to make it through. Um, in this part, we're going to jump back over to the Eastern Theater. We're going to pick up with operations there. Remember, boy, in the East, it's just been really frustrating for Lincoln. Um, McClellan has continued to caused problems for Lincoln in that he, remains hesitant, remains overly cautious, and that's just going to be something that bugs Lincoln, and will eventually drive Lincoln to remove him from office. Our whole goal here with this part is to make it up and through the Battle of Antietam. So let's get started here. Really quickly, as a side note, in class, we spent some time, just a few minutes really, talking about Ironclads and the Battle of Hampton Roads, this clash between Ironclads, and how that impacted not just the Civil War, not just American history, but how that was a major turning point for naval operations around the world. I'm not going to go into that here. I have posted in the playlist a little clip from, I guess it's 2 or 3 minutes long, 3 or 4 minutes possibly, from Ken Burns' series, The Civil War. So I urge you to go over there and take a look at that. It just takes a few minutes and does a really nice job talking about Ironclads and this clash at Hampton Roads. So let's go ahead and get started here. As I said, kind of in the introduction, the Union continues to have troubles in the East. General McClellan is going to be, after being prodded by Lincoln, will devise a plan to move south and capture the Confederate capital at Richmond. We're going to call this the Peninsula Campaign. And the reason we call it the Peninsula Campaign is that McClellan will move his army by sea down to the Virginia Peninsula. I'll bring that up here on the screen. You can see here this blue line indicates that the troops have moved by sea and will make a landing here on this peninsula. His plan is to move kind of to get behind the Confederate army and pretty much have a straight shot at Richmond. Well, as has been the case for McClellan, the Confederates have responded nicely to this, and you'll see he'll encounter problems as soon as he makes landfall. There'll be he'll encounter Confederate troops here. On this map, the blue indicates movements by Union forces, the red, of course, by Confederate forces. However, McClellan will stay and work down, get really all the way to the outskirts of Richmond. The Confederate forces will be under Joseph Johnston. During the Battle of Seven Pines, which is kind of the climactic battle, really, I guess, the high water mark as far as the Union is concerned during this campaign, and that's about as close as they get to Richmond. They'll be stopped at the Battle of Seven Pines. Joseph Johnston will be wounded in that battle, and really the most important thing that comes out of this, other than the Union not achieving its goal, will be that with the injury to Johnston, we'll now have Robert E. Lee jump on the scene, and Robert E. Lee will take command of the Army of Northern Virginia. He'll pick up where Johnston left off. He's more aggressive than Johnston, and he'll be aggressive right from the get-go. He'll engage in a series of battles that comes to be known as the 7 Days Battles, and it'll lead into utter defeat for McClellan and for the Union Army, and they'll go scurrying back north across the border and into the relative safety of the Union. So that kind of ends this Peninsula Campaign, and I know we went through that really quickly, but the big stories that come out of the campaign is that we get Robert E. Lee now in command. He'll be in command all the way through the end of this war. But also As I mentioned in class, another face that comes out of this battle is guys like Edwin Jenison. When we look at that picture, everyone had pretty much the same reaction. Man, that's just a young guy, a young kid, and that's exactly right. The Confederate army is having to resort to using younger and younger troops. And so that's going to be a problem for Robert E. Lee. We're going to see that even though Lee will be incredibly successful against the Union Army, that success will come with some cost, and he and the Confederacy will be unable to sustain the level of cost exactly that will be in manpower. So coming out of the successful defense of the Peninsula Campaign, Lee decides it's time to take the war to the Union, and so he's going to plan out an initial campaign of invasion of the North, and he'll move straight up through Maryland. Some interesting facts about the battle. In fact, today, as I mentioned in an earlier Instagram post, today is the anniversary of this war plan, this battle plan these orders of Lee's being found by some Union officers in an abandoned Confederate camp. It let McClellan know exactly what Lee had planned, and that was to divide his force, send an army under Stonewall Jackson over to capture Harper's Ferry and hopefully all the material that was there. But instead of jumping on this opportunity to attack a much depleted force, McClellan waits, and that's been a problem for him. And it'll be enough time for Lee to bring some of that back together when he realizes that there's going to be a confrontation, that these two armies are going to meet near Sharpsburg, Maryland, near a creek called Antietam, and that's where we'll get the name of the battle. So Lee has chosen this battlefield. Lee likes the battlefield. He likes the opportunities it provides as far as cover. There's a sunken road that moves through the area. There's a cornfield. There's some rock formations, and he believes that is the ideal place to wage this battle. Early on, it's going to be kind of a back and forth affair. Both sides will sustain heavy casualties, but at the end of the day, Lee will not be able to compete with the overwhelming numbers brought to the field by McClellan and his Union Army. We'll be left with 23,000 casualties. The battlefield will be littered with bodies. We'll see battlefield photography become a real factor, as 2 days later, photographers will show up on the field. I mentioned this guy Gardner, who shows up on the field and takes all of these photographs that become an exhibit in New York City. That just bring the war and what the war looks like back home to Americans, like it had never happened before in history. This is an entirely new new factor that will have to play into the politics of war. No more. Never again will the home front be shielded from the images of the battlefield. At the end of the battle, Lee will escape. He'll get back over the border to Virginia, and McClellan again will kind of miss an opportunity to crush the army and possibly end the war. One of Lee's main objectives for invasion was to try to get a decisive victory in the North. He wanted to push all the way up. His objective was really to get to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, important rail hub there, and hopefully by scoring in a decisive win in the heart of the North, attract help and assistance from from the British, and then hopefully from the French. Those hopes will be dashed here at Antietam. It'll be an incredibly costly loss for Lee in the South. Fortunately for him, McClellan won't pursue. It's going to frustrate Lincoln. Lincoln's had enough of the hesitations, and he will visit the battlefield the next day and meet with McClellan and sack McClellan and place Ambrose Burnside in command of the army. So we've got a few images here taken by Alexander Gardner on the battlefield that just shows you the scale of loss. I mean, these images would have been almost unbelievable to people who saw them, from the north back on the home front. Here you see the sunken road, and the bodies just piled up in there. It comes to be called Bloody Lane after the battle. There's Lincoln at Antietam. We got Lincoln meeting General George B. McClellan, some other of the top officers there for the Union Army. And of course, Lincoln will sack McClellan, and it'll be really the end of McClellan's career in the U.S. military. He'll eventually run against Lincoln in the election of 1864 and get defeated. All right, well that kind of wraps things up. I know I went really quickly there, but boy, time flies here. It's about 11 and a half minutes. I'm going to hopefully wrap this whole thing up in part 4. Try to take us through the Gettysburg campaign and through Lee's surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. But for now, I'll sign off, and I hope you watch this episode and the ones that follow.